They say time changes everything, but no one ever tells you that time can also erase the faces that once meant the world to you. There comes a day when the voices that raised you become silent echoes in your busy life, and the people who gave you everything start to feel like strangers. This is the story of David and Grace Miller and their only son, Ethan. David and Grace lived in a small, cozy house at the edge of town. For most of their lives, that house was full of laughter. Ethan's laughter. He was their pride, their only child, their reason to keep going. They worked hard, David as a mechanic, Grace as a school teacher. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Every morning, David would drive Ethan to school in his old blue truck, singing off-key songs that made Ethan laugh. Grace would wait at the door every evening with snacks and a hug. Life was simple, but beautiful. As years passed, Ethan grew older, taller, busier, more distant. He got into a big city university. His parents cried with pride the day he left. Grace packed homemade food, and David slipped some extra cash into his son's bag. "Just in case," he said with a grin. Ethan hugged them both quickly, already thinking about the new life waiting ahead. That was the day their house became quieter. At first, Ethan called home every weekend. "Mum, the classes are tough. Dad, I made some new friends." They would listen, laugh, and feel alive again. But slowly, the calls became shorter, then less frequent, then rare. When Grace called, Ethan would say, "Mum, I'm busy right now. I'll call later." Later never came. Messages went unanswered. Birthdays became just text messages. "Thanks, Mom. Love you." Short, polite, distant. David noticed the change, but he didn't say much. He just sat on the porch each evening, watching the road as if expecting his son to come home any moment. Grace, meanwhile, kept cooking Ethan's favourite dishes every Sunday. Lasagna, just like when he was little, even though no one came to eat. Years rolled by. Ethan graduated, got a good job, and moved into a city apartment. His parents saw his life through social media, smiling photos with friends, parties, vacations, success. They were proud, but also forgotten. One afternoon, David and Grace decided to visit him by surprise. They took the morning train to the city, carrying a small bag of homemade food and a framed photo of the three of them. Grace was nervous. "Do you think he'll be happy to see us?" she asked. David smiled weakly. "He's our son, Grace. Of course he will." When they reached his apartment, they rang the bell. After a long moment, Ethan opened the door, looking shocked. "Mum? Dad? What are you doing here?" Grace's eyes lit up. "We wanted to see you, honey. It's been so long." Ethan looked uncomfortable. "You should have called first. I have friends over." From behind him, laughter came from inside. His friends drinking, music playing, the smell of alcohol in the air. David stepped forward. "We just wanted to drop by, that's all. We brought your favourite food." Ethan sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Okay, but can we make it quick? I'm kinda busy." Grace's smile faded, but she nodded. They sat for a few minutes, while Ethan barely looked at them, checking his phone. When David tried to ask about his work, Ethan gave short answers. Grace looked around his apartment, not a single family photo in sight. Finally, Ethan stood up. "Thanks for coming, but I really have to get back." Grace handed him the food box. "At least eat this later, okay?" He smiled politely, but his eyes were already elsewhere. They left quietly. The door closed behind them, and the laughter inside resumed, louder this time. On the train ride home, Grace stared out the window, silent. David held her hand. "He's just busy," he said, his voice heavy. But deep down, he knew. Their son, the little boy who once ran into his arms every evening, was gone. Not by death, but by distance. After that day, they didn't call much anymore. They didn't want to bother him. They still sent birthday messages, but stopped expecting replies. The years went on. Their hair turned grey. Their bodies grew weaker. The world outside their window kept moving fast, faster than they could follow. One evening, David's heart gave out. Grace sat beside him in the hospital, holding his hand, whispering prayers. "You'll be okay," she said, tears falling silently. But he didn't wake up. He died with her name on his lips, and his son's photo clutched in his hand. Grace called Ethan that night. It took 3 tries before he answered. "Mum, what's wrong?" Her voice broke. "It's your father. He's gone." There was silence on the line. Then Ethan said softly, "I'll try to come, Mum. I'm just in the middle of something right now. He didn't come that night. He arrived 2 days later for the funeral. By then, the house was filled with neighbours and the scent of lilies. Grace sat quietly by the coffin, her eyes empty. Ethan walked in, dressed neatly, holding his phone. He looked at his father's face, calm, peaceful, gone. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. He whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad." Grace looked at him, her voice quiet and trembling. "He waited for you every evening, until his last breath." Ethan couldn't speak. His world suddenly felt heavy. The man he had drifted away from had loved him till the end, without anger, without complaint. That night, Ethan sat in his childhood room, dusty, untouched. On the wall were old drawings, trophies and photos. One photo showed the three of them smiling at a fair cotton candy in hand. He stared at it for hours, tears falling silently. Years later, Ethan had children of his own. He tried to call his mother often, visit her when he could. But time, again, was cruel. Grace grew old and fragile, her memory fading. The last time Ethan visited, she didn't recognize him. She smiled politely, like a stranger. He held her hand and whispered, "It's me, Mum." "Ethan." She looked at him kindly but blankly. "You have kind eyes," she said softly. He broke down, realizing the circle had turned. Now he was the stranger. When parents become strangers to their own kids, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, through missed calls, short replies, postponed visits, forgotten dinners. One day, you look back and realize you've lost something you can never get back. Because love doesn't die all at once. Sometimes, it just fades quietly, like a voice on the other end of the phone that you stopped listening to.